Have you ever watched a major disaster unfold on the news and just wondered, how does anyone bring order to that kind of chaos? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible system that does exactly that. It's called the Incident Command System. I mean, just look at this. On one side, you've got these massive evacuation zones for Hurricane Sandy, covering huge parts of New York City. And on the other, a tightly focused grid for a search and rescue operation after a terrible landslide in Washington. We're talking about two totally different disasters, thousands of miles apart. So how on earth do you manage both? And that, right there, is the million-dollar question. You've got firefighters, police, state troopers, medical teams all showing up on scene. It looks like a recipe for absolute confusion, so who's actually calling the shots? To get to that answer, we first have to understand the problem that every single emergency, big or small, really presents. Think about it. Every major event is this tangled web of people. You have teams with different gear, different training. Sometimes they're not even on the same radio frequency. And they're all trying to work together under unbelievable pressure. You know, without a shared system, it's so easy for wires to get crossed, for resources to be wasted, and for the whole response to just fail. So, how do you stop that from happening? Well, you give everyone the same playbook, a universal playbook designed specifically for disaster. And that playbook is the Incident Command System, or ICS. Now, this thing wasn't dreamt up in some quiet boardroom. It was literally forged in fire. Back in the 1970s, after some absolutely devastating wildfires in California, fire chiefs got together and realized their biggest enemy wasn't a fire itself. It was a total lack of coordination. ICS was their answer, a standardized framework that could work for any hazard you can possibly imagine. Yeah, the best way to wrap your head around it is to think of it like an organizational chart in a box. It's a pre-built management system that can shrink down for a small incident or expand out for a massive one. It fits whatever you throw at it. And this is where you can really see its power. I mean, look at the scale here. A Type 5 incident, that's the simplest kind. It could just be a single police officer at a traffic stop. But that same fundamental system can scale all the way up to a Type 1 incident, like the response to the 9/11 attacks, where you're coordinating thousands of people from dozens of agencies. The principles don't change, just the size of the board. So, what's the secret sauce? How does it actually work in practice? Well, it all boils down to a few core ideas that are deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful. The real genius of ICS comes down to three things. First, unity of command. This is huge. It means every single person reports to only one supervisor. No confusion, no conflicting orders. Second, it's a modular organization. This means you build the command structure to fit the disaster you have, not some rigid preset chart. You only plug in the pieces you need. And third, management by objectives. Every single thing anyone does is tied to a clear, measurable goal. And that brings us to this really crucial tool they use inside ICS, S.M.A.R.T objectives. This is how leaders take pure chaos and turn it into concrete, focused action. Every single goal has to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And you can see how it works right here. You start with a vague idea, right? Shelter evacuees. Okay, great, but that's not a plan. Then it gets more specific. We need to shelter 500 evacuees. Better. Then it becomes actionable. We need to provide those 500 spaces within 12 hours. Now we're talking. And finally, you get the full S.M.A.R.T objective with a hard deadline on a specific date. Now, everybody on that team knows exactly what success looks like and when it needs to happen. Okay, but here's the thing. Having a perfect system on paper is one thing. The biggest hurdles in any crisis, they're not about logistics. They're human. And in the world of emergency response, these are the two biggest enemies you'll face, ego and the silo. So let's talk about what those really mean. Ego is pretty simple. It's when someone's rank or their personal ambition to be the hero gets in the way of the actual mission. And the silo, that's what happens when different departments or agencies stop sharing information. They protect their own turf instead of working for the common good. This is the kind of gut check question that good leaders have to ask themselves all the time. Am I micromanaging my team? Am I stepping outside my assigned role just because of my title? That's the ego talking, and it is a massive red flag. You can think of it like driving a car. The first signs that ego and silos are creeping in, they're like hitting a rumble strip on the highway. You start to hear some unhappy rumblings from your staff. Communication feels a little off. It's that subtle vibration that tells you, hey, you're starting to drift off course. Now, that's where ICS comes in. The system itself acts as the guardrail. The clear roles, the chain of command, the fact that everyone is speaking the same language, that's the structure that's meant to keep the whole response on the road, moving safely toward the goal. But if you ignore those rumble strips, if you let ego and silos grab the steering wheel, you can crash right through that guardrail. And that's exactly when communication breaks down, efficiency just vanishes, and the whole mission can fall apart. So, let's bring this all home. The entire point of this whole system, from top to bottom, is to bring order where there is none. And here's the bottom line. ICS is this amazing, logical, but invisible framework that handles all the management stuff so that the responders on the ground can focus on their mission. It frees them from worrying about who's in charge so they can do what actually matters, saving lives. In the end, this is the system that takes that chaotic, tangled mess of a disaster and transforms it into a coordinated, effective operation. It's the system that turns chaos into hope. And that kind of leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? This system was built to handle the absolute worst-case scenarios. But what can we learn from it? Which of these principles, like having one clear leader or setting those super clear SMART objectives, could we maybe borrow to bring a little more order to our own complex projects, whether it's at work or even just in our own lives?